Hey, Dragon Dreamers. Gina Virginia Casella here, and welcome to Story Species, Story Medicine, Extra Strength. When we share our stories, we give and receive medicine. One of the best ways to heal is with the earth. And that's exactly what we do with each other right here on Story Species, Story Medicine, Extra Strength. Ready to take your medicine? Hey everybody, Gina Virginia Casella here, and welcome to Story Species, Story Medicine. I've got a wonderful guest for us today, Sheila, Spiral Sister Murray, first-time guest, and I wonder if you're ready to take your medicine. Today we're celebrating Sheila's 5th book. Can you believe it? It's already 5th one. We are all connected. Sheila's also going to be a keynote speaker at our conference, Summer Days, Saturday, June 13th. Make sure you grab a ticket now on my Buy Me a Coffee, or if you want a better deal, get in on a membership. Let me read over Sheila's biography for you. There's so many interesting things to say about Sheila. We were just chit-chatting behind the stage. It's easy to slip into timelessness, and I look forward to all the insight that we're going to gain. Sheila is a multi-talented, empathetic, and analytic creative. She's got lots of education behind her, degrees in business and visual communication, digital design. Sheila took it upon herself to heal her body of asthma. She went to Sedona, Arizona in 2016 and returned with a wellness group in 2019. Sheila and her husband took a sacred Celtic journey to Ireland, England, and Scotland in 2019 after her father unexpectedly passed away. This led her to having lots of experiences. She was very interested in near-death experiences and research, assisting Dr. Raymond Moody as an email assistant. Dr. Raymond is an author of Life After Death and God is Bigger Than the Bible, among many other titles. Sheila is the founder of the Integrating the Spirals, a process to assist in our deep programming from all the programming and conditioning we've been bombarded with since the invention of radio, television, and movies. Sheila has written a holistic health book, Have Yourself a Wholly Vibrant Life, Reversing Asthma and Other Chronic Illness Naturally, a metaphysical book, Blue Eyes, Ethereal Message of Connection, and the latest, We Are All Connected, the how, the why, and the analytical mind searches for answers. She wrote 2 other books that were co-authored before all of these 5, and you can get that on Amazon. Sheila's links, you can find that in the description, sheilamurray.net. It's my absolute pleasure to bring to the stage Sheila, Spiral Sister Murray. Sheila, how are you doing today? Welcome, welcome, welcome to Story Species, Story Medicine, Extra Strength. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much, Gina. Very well, thank you. This is exciting.
Yes, I mean, where do we start, right? And so how do I even know Sheila? Sheila and I, we like community, we like to participate. We're those people that if you're hosting a conference or something, we like to be front row center. We've got our hands up. If you've got a chat on the go, we're in there chatting. And that's what it's all about, right? And so we actually met in Dr. Bruce Lipton's community, learning about communicells, reprogramming. Both of us very passionate about this business of reprogramming. And, we all have story medicine to share. And a lot of people don't realize when you share your story, you're really sharing your medicine. And when you receive a story, you receive the medicine. And folks out there might be listening and thinking, wait, what? She had asthma and now you don't have asthma anymore. And You cleared that. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that before we dive into your book? Because I know once we dive into it, and I'm going to read the introduction as well, it's going to be too easy to slip into timelessness. So tell us about that, Sheila. And I'm going to mute myself just for the echo behind here. But tell us about this asthma business and what you did. I want to hear it all.
Okay. Well, the asthma book, good news, is only 200 pages. And the new one's 600. So there you go. Yeah. But the reason that I wrote that is because I've been working for over 30 years in information technology as a technical writer and a business analyst. So my day job was always collecting data and then documenting it. And I wrote user guides for a whole lot of companies in my career, including Kennedy Space Center too in Florida. You can think NASA for short. So what happened was I was traveling. I had been a 100% road warrior consultant for about 3 years. And so I was flying every week. One of my first stints was flying every week from Florida to New York City. And so up and back every week, you can imagine air pressure and all the stuff that we inhale on a flight. I was doing that every week for a year. And throughout that process, the asthma that I'd had since I was 6 years old just progressively got worse. Eventually, I was on 5 different pharmaceutical medications for that. And I didn't have to go to the ER, so I really didn't have the struggles documented, but of course I had the regular doctor visits, asthma specialist visits, and all of that I have documented. So I was keeping all of that and just kind of journaling slightly about it, especially when certain trips or seasons of the year bothered me more because I had more of a reaction to pollen and things. So depending on where I went, if I was in Los Angeles, California, or I was in Missouri in the middle of the country, depending on the time of year, it would get worse. So one of the last places that I traveled to actually was Missouri. I was there for about 1.5 years off and on, working a contract. And I would have to climb this hill to get into a university early in the morning when it was still cold and damp. And the asthma really acted up. And I ended up going to a chiropractor because throughout the course of my life, I'd been introduced to chiropractic through my grandparents. And so I went to a chiropractor. I did not go to an ER. And that's pivotal because in the book, I write about how the company that I worked for at that time, I went to an asthma specialist who put me on allergy shots every week. And they wanted me to be home and not do that travel to Missouri. And I was still living in Florida at that time. So this was a company or a doctor specialist in Orlando, Florida that I was going to. And they said, you need to be home. And they gave me a letter to give to my employer. And I did that. And I was just over 40 at that time too. And so I thought, silly me, that I was somehow protected, like in a protected class, people told me, because I was over 40 and I had a health issue. And I thought, well, they'll play along and be nice and let me somehow work from the office instead of traveling. This was way before work from home was a thing, right? So I did that, and actually it backfired on me. My boss became kind of intolerable, and he and the HR lady got together and asked me to resign. So they said, if you can't travel and we hired you to travel, you no longer have a job. So I was like, okay. And I went to see an attorney. And he said, there's really nothing I can do for you because I didn't go to the ER. I went to an alternative type practitioner, a chiropractor, whom even though I had an x-ray of my chest from him and that sort didn't matter. So anyway, I really began then intently documenting what all happened, what I did, because I needed some of that anyway for the attorney. But because I could get no resolution, I just decided, okay, let me not waste my energy. Thankfully, intuitively, somehow I knew that even before being introduced to Abraham Hicks, which and Abraham Hicks was really my first official introduction into law of attraction and how the magnetism and attraction works, right? But at any rate, I went ahead and I went down this path to just working on, let me see what else I can change in and of myself before I seek any other further external help. And so I was at a health food store one day and I noticed they had a bulletin board of people's business cards. So I thought, this is a great, why didn't I think of this before? You know, sometimes the new thoughts that drop in are just spectacular. So I walk over to the board, I pick up a card. The nutritionist who happened to own the store, and I didn't know she was a nutritionist, came up to me and said, what are you looking for? And I said, well, I've got this situation, explained it to her. She said, well, have you ever done food allergy testing? I said, yes. When I was a child, they tested me out, maybe 13 or so, and I'm allergic to blah, 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 right? And she said, well, let me do some muscle testing on you. Didn't have any idea what that was. So I documented that. Kinesiology, I explored that for a while. I thought I might even change my career and go into that. Biofeedback came into my life. I thought maybe I need to so I would dabble in different things, and I just never quite felt right for me to do as a practitioner. But I thought, certainly I'm going to explore these modalities and start using what I can day to day and see what improves. But I will tell you, as far as clearing the asthma, the best thing I did, besides working with her, because she did make dietary recommendations, like she told me to take a lot of garlic capsules, which who knew? I didn't have any idea you could take more than one of some supplement. It just didn't occur to me. So she had me taking 3 or 4 garlic capsules a day. She had me go off of dairy completely, which I think those 2 things were pivotal for me diet-wise, to clear mucus, because we do store and create a lot of mucus in our bodies anyway. But the best thing I did was I went to an acupuncture physician, not just an acupuncturist, but a doctor of Oriental medicine. And this particular lady, and I'd seen a couple, but they didn't resonate for whatever reason. And when I got to the third one, she's still practicing, by the way, but she moved from Florida, went to South Carolina. She laid hands on me. She prayed for me. She sang over me while she'd put the needles in. And, you know, I began to meditate. I didn't even know I was meditating. She told me, just keep reading. I would go every session and ask her, what else can I do? What should I be doing? What can I do for myself, you know, to self, well, I didn't even know the term self-love then, but to apply self-care. You know? And so she would guide me week to week, because I started seeing her weekly initially, and then every 2 weeks, and then once a month. And she, within 6 months, had me off all 5 medication drugs. Now, I had a healing crisis at some point, and or the flu. Nobody could ever prove, but it was in the summertime. I did go to the ER that time. My husband insisted, because I was coughing so deeply, I thought I would break a rib. And I was also peeing blood, because it somehow or another, either coughing tore something, or I don't know, but they said I had a bladder infection, which I thought, I don't have UTIs just from coughing. It didn't make sense to me, but I was like, whatever, right? I thought I was dying. I felt horrible. And I went to the ER, and the nurses there said, oh, you can't get the flu in the summer. Well, that was a myth, because years later I found out from other RNs, yes, you can. You can get the flu anytime, you know. But I went to the beach. I laid on the sand. I did a lot of things that I didn't even realize I was doing good for myself. So I was doing earthing and grounding before I ever learned the good of earthing and grounding. I was breathing the salt air. You know, I was doing a lot of things holistically for myself before I really realized why they were good for me, and all that went in the book too. But yeah, just so going to the health food store, talking with a nutritionist, going for acupuncture from a doctor of Oriental medicine, and that's important. I can get into later, but it's really, they look at things so differently. They know the meridians in and out. And later that would play a role when I met a chakra teacher. And I can talk about her at some point too later. But yeah, I mean, everything has been layered, and all the different levels, the degrees, the doses of the supplements, all these things matter. So that's my little catchphrase now, is layers, levels, doses, and degrees. No matter what the issue is, what comes in, what challenge that we're here to resolve, or to just simply learn something that's going to enhance our life, is all a matter of levels, layers, doses, and degrees. Temperature, as in degrees, temperature stuff. Temperature can make a huge difference. That's what had happened to me when that cold air in Missouri set off the asthma. That was a trigger, right? Pollen and allergens can be triggers, but it's dependent, it's dose dependent. Now you hear people talk about microdosing different supplements and different herbs and things. There again, it's a dosage situation. So typically we're always balancing, and that's where integrating the spirals kind of comes into the conversation. But yes, we're always balancing all through our lives, every day, everything we do. How much information do we take in? When do we need to be still and know, right? When do we need to stop talking? So it's all a matter of balancing. Yes, thank you so much for that
I know,
question.
Sheila, that is amazing information and personal information to share. I mean, like, that's the real heart of the story medicine, because it's not just about, you seeking alternative medicine. It's the part about the employer. That's really scary, especially at the age of 40. And a lot of us have a midlife crisis, which typically is around age 40, myself included. And then you end up facing the stigmas of mental health. And I wrote notes when you were talking. I wrote down lawsuit. That's terrifying, and I can relate to that, because it's like nobody said to me, oh, you're lying. You're just making this up. Well, what else are you saying to me? And excuse me for not healing fast enough for somebody else's agenda, or excuse me for not fitting into your cookie cutter shape. Like, it just, it like, it upsets me, you know, um, and it was a lot of healing, just because that's part of the story medicine too. It's not just being sick, but now it's like you're socially and emotionally sick from this. And I also wrote the word gaslighting down, because you know what? Maybe you had the flu, maybe you didn't have the flu, but for what it's worth, something is not right. It is impairing your very breathing. So you're not the doctor, you're not the nurse, but you have a language and you're using it to the best of your ability, and you're identifying it, you're categorizing it as the flu. So why would a doctor or a nurse get hung up on your language? You're the client. And then I totally relate to seeking alternative medicine, where ironically, that's where you find your healing and what works. Those tend to not be the people to fill out your forms and whatnot, so that you can collect insurance and whatnot. And that's basically what happened to me. Everybody who supported me didn't fill out the insurance papers, and I ended up getting cut off. Oh, okay, so I'll just go back to work when I'm not ready to go back to work. And, you know, and here you are flying from point A to point B, and the employer not having a willingness to really work with you. Respectfully, yeah, they hired you to travel. You can't travel anymore, but surely there's something else in the company that you could do. Like, where's the employer rights and stuff like that? Like, it's just this whole can of worms that opens. Um, so I really thank you for sharing that, because how many people out there feel alone, feel misunderstood, or you actually start challenging yourself? Because you know what? Some people, they are lazy. Some people, they are needy. They are dramatic. They are looking for attention. but most folks are not. And I feel like if somebody's going to consistently be advocating that they're not well and they can't explain why, that in itself is like red flags of mental health and wellness failing. Like we're the clients, we don't know what's wrong with us, and then we get dismissed, and then we don't go to the emergency room, we don't speak out anymore. It's very confusing. And then now we end up having like infections and stuff like that that get the best of us, and it's very upsetting. And so I really thank you for sharing such personal information. And I was also wondering about this Celtic healing journey that you and your husband did. And like, was that part of this, like part of the asthma and part of the healing, or that was like a completely separate? Tell us about that. I want to know.
Okay. Well, yeah, the asthma thing was 2004, so that time frame. And as far as the flying too, I wanted to mention that I did slowly quit flying after 2001 because of the September, the 9/11 situation, and because I'd been going back and forth to New York City too. So there was trepidation involved with flying again, but I did start driving, and I would literally drive and tow a travel trailer behind me to all points. I went to Louisiana, back to Missouri. Yeah, it was a fun time though. I had two little doggies with me, and they were my comfort and joy. Um, so then the Sacred Celtic Journey happened in 2019. I'm so glad I actually went back to flying again by 2019. So fast forward from the 2001, 2004 era to 2019. I had lost both my parents at that point. My mother passed in 2017. I had a visitation in a nighttime dream from her, but had no words surrounding that, right? No languaging. And then my dad passed in 2019 in March, and I was scheduled already for this Sacred Celtic Journey by myself with the group and Patricia McGivern, who was my hypnotherapist. Um, so I'd had that plan and paid for and everything. And then I just sort of went, I didn't go into grief because I did have a shared death experience within 24 hours after my dad passed, which helped me immensely to not grieve the way I expected that I would have. And everybody around me thought I would fall into pieces. But I did sort of like, not, it's hard to explain, but I sort of went down in my spirit, not to a depressed state, but just a sadness, a level of sadness. There's the levels again. So my husband said, I just don't want you to go alone. I'm like, well, I won't be going alone because Patricia's there. And we'd already had a physical face-to-face meeting with everybody else that was going. And there was about 14 of us. And so 12 or 14. And so I said, I won't be alone. I have this small group that I'll be traveling with. He said, no, no. In your state, I really think I need to be there with you. I think secretly he wanted to go. But I said, Patricia will be doing something called past life regressions. And my husband's not woo woo, or wasn't then at the time. He's a pretty in the box Christian. I'll just leave it at that. And so he's like, and I would say things like, but God has, it's God's timing, and God had these things happen in such, in all these different ways. So he's grown with me. My husband and I've been married 21 years now, but so he's grown with me with the spiral curls and the spiral noodle thinking too. And so he's like, well, you have a point, but I'm just going to sit there. I just think that she's just instructing people on how to do creative writing. I said, well, however you want to think about it, honey, it's fine with me, as long as you don't interrupt the process, right? Or maybe you go take a walk when we do our past life regression stuff, but you'll enjoy the rest of the trip. So he did. He had a great time. And then I baited him too, when he had already decided to go, but to get him to kind of pay for his own and everything, I said, I'll take you. I'll pay for the Game of Thrones tour. The only problem was, unbeknownst to me, and it was my little wink from the universe back, is that you think you're giving him a carrot to go with you, but we did that Game of Thrones tour first, and it must have been 50 miles of walking, and I was in so much pain. By the second day, when we started our sacred Celtic journey with Patricia, I could barely walk. So thankfully I had brought something with me, but you're only allowed to have those little bottles, to fly with. So I had a gel that was from a MLM company that I won't mention now, but I was selling some products for them at the time. So I had their little travel size gel packets with me. So I was rubbing that all over my thighs and everything, because I'm like, I can't walk. I can't do any more walking. But yes, he enjoyed the trip very much, and he did sit in on some of the past life regressions. A few times he sat with his eyes open, which we're really not supposed to do, but he wanted to see everybody else's reaction. So one of my friends, who is a psychic medium, said to me later, confidentially, but I'll tell you now since it's been all these years, she said, "Your husband is having his own awakening, Sheila." So I thought, well, we all learn at differing rates of speed. That dropped in during that time. I was just like, this is incredible. We just can't limit God. Well, I say can't, and I try to use that word very judiciously. We prefer not to, right, limit God, because, and that's why I wanted to say, we just can't limit God, because God is limitless, and that belief is so strong in me that's when the word can't comes out. But yeah, I shy away from a couple of words. I shy away from perfection. I shy away from can't. And I try to catch myself. And I know you do this, right? The cancel, delete, and those words when we catch ourselves doing something. Yeah. So cancel, right? But yes, so
That's
we'll
hilarious.
yeah.
Um, and you know what? Probably stressful for your husband too, this awakening, even just to be married to somebody like you, like back when you were dating, like those stages, like, who is this girl? And meditation stories and whatnot. And just like all the time and transitioning that you're going through yourself personally. I was raised Roman Catholic, and it was stressful for me to get into things like chakras and whatnot. Like, I always had an awareness of chakras, but I didn't understand them. And honestly, the exposure that I had was full of stigmas. It would be like posters that had to do with drugs and stuff like that, and trippy looking rainbows. And I thought, oh, I don't know what chakras are. Like, I thought maybe it was jewelry or something. I was completely did not know. And eventually, like probably in my late 20s, I was like, oh, like bit by bit, kind of piecing it together. And even like when I would take yoga, I was like, what am I taking? There's like a spiritual context, linked to this. And when I was in grade two angels came out of my wall. Now, they weren't angels, but at the time, that's what my brain told me. My mind protected me. But even though I was raised Roman Catholic, that was not well received. So isn't that interesting? Like, even in that context, it it was too weird. Like, it's okay to talk about Santa Claus, it's okay to talk about the tooth fairy, but then you've got this. And so I wonder, like, your husband's perspective, and even just like ghost stories growing up, and even going through the motions of wondering, like, I understood, okay, Jesus is a demigod. But then one day at church, somebody referred to Jesus as like a ghost. And I was like, wait, what? Huh? I never made that connection before. Like, all of a sudden, Jesus is scary. He's in the ghost category. And not having people to talk to about this kind of stuff, and developmentally from the child perspective, right? You don't want to challenge the adults. Community is vital. So if the community says yes to this, no to that, you're saying yes to this and no to that too, right? Can you tell us a little bit about growing up, and just like, were you always able to have such conversations with your friends and family, or was this like very taboo? Oh, Sheila's talking her talk again. Just a little bit about that.
Thank you, Gina. What a great question. And it all goes back to my mom. My mom, really, my mom would talk to the neighbors. She would talk to people she met. on the street, and she would always default into this conversation about God. She was very interested in all the other religions. I only remember her ever having one argument with a gentleman. I won't name the church he was affiliated with, but she literally had to cast him out of our house because it got that heated. He was one of those all or nothing, here's the line, and you cannot cross this line. So my mother, yeah, she taught me from an early age to talk with spirit. She took me to church. I went to the all the different classes. We weren't Catholic, but the faith that I was raised in was the original Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Some people call them the Mormons. We always referred to the people who went west as the Mormon Church. We did not call ourselves the Mormons. And my mother resisted that title her whole life. But she would say that we were following the book of the second witness of Jesus, the witness of Jesus in this country. So in essence, it was all about the coming of Zion would be in the U.S., that the U.S. was the land of milk and honey. And anyone who had very stringent ideas about that not being the case, which kind of gets into politics, so I won't do that. But she would have those kinds of, butt heads, right? So she could kind of feel that coming, and she would just avoid that issue. But my mother was highly attuned. I know the frequency in the tinnitus that I experience it just changed. So thank you, Mama. She was always very giving, and she wanted people to, I believe, because she had written in the margins of her Bible that after she passed, I went back through, and one of the things she wrote that she was very sold on was that God lives in us. So whether that means accepting Jesus or accepting the Christed, or I've heard it put a lot of different ways, the Christ consciousness, if your belief is that, and I just got the tingles too. I call them God bumps. So yes, if you believe that God is in you, whether that's the Holy Ghost, like I remember hearing Jesus as the ghost as well, but in terms of the Holy Ghost, right? So I would go to different churches as well. One of my rants on Facebook, I remember one of my cousins posting, she gets it naturally, it's in her blood. This is how her mother was. So in other words, she was telling this person who was ranting back with me, you're not going to stop her. I'm like, this is my Facebook page. If you don't like it, you can leave. You're more than welcome to leave and move on. But yes, I get it naturally. Thank you so much for asking that. Thank you, Mama. That's what I do to communicate with Mama, Papa, and my grandparents. My little ways of doing that somatically or bodily, so that they know that, one day I believe on the other side, we'll revisit all this as a movie. And then they'll go, yeah, see, my daughter was thinking about us then, or my granddaughter. I give credit where credit's due.
Oh, that's hilarious. Thank you so much for sharing that. And even just right now, when you did this, like, is the right side for your dad, left side for your mom, or does it matter? Or
People, you're right. People do talk in those terms. I think it was left is mother's side and right is father's. But I don't hold too strictly to that because of the spiral component. And because in Taoism, when I took my Qigong classes from a Taoist master, he said that, like at the end, and Taoists and people that do Qigong will know this, you hold your hand like down over your well, I was going to say Qi center, but it's the Dantian. So when you're on the Dantian, so for females, it's like the left hand over the right and opposite for men. And I thought, and now with all the gender fluidity, I mean, right? So is it the biological male, female? Is it the what we envision ourselves at. So I'm loosening up on some of those rules, shall we say. And sometimes I do the spiral this way, and sometimes I do it that way. So I think it's just about becoming more aware and intuitive and what comes to us, and then honor that, because I think we are always interacting. Now, here we go again. We're always interacting with the unseen. And whether that be, and I know there's some people out there, because I've met a few, who will say, we can't let the veil be porous, because then some of the unwanted spirits may come in, right? The whole being careful thing. And this is why people build containers. I get the whole idea of that. It's just not something that I've needed to follow yet. And that so it's the mystery. It's part of the mystery. I don't have all the answers. I will say that I think that we just need our intuition to guide us. And I'm a dowser too. So I use dowsing rods, but my human body is a dowsing rod. I feel very strongly the yes answer. I feel the God bumps physically in my thighs. I get that yes answer, and it's like a effervescing sensation. Almost feels like the blood is sort of boiling. It's not muscular. It's not just goosebumps on the flesh. It's internal. So I get that feeling very strongly when it's a yes. I don't often get no answers, which aligns with Abraham Hicks, because they say the universe doesn't think in terms of no. So I don't know. I'm still learning. And I love that. I love that I'm still childlike about all this. And I don't get, because one of my big missions in this lifetime is I take myself too seriously. And so I'm letting go of that. Thank you.
I hear you. Like sometimes, you want to have intentions. You want to do things with meaning, and then it's like you get too serious and hung up on things. And you know what? I wrote Eagle Condor when you were talking, because Eagle Condor medicine is so important, because it has to do with applying the knowledge, skills, training, carrying it forward, alchemizing it, and that's exactly what you're talking about. And you don't just take this business of left is female, right is male. You use it and you make it your own. If it's working for you, great. And then I wrote like my gemstone readings, because I don't know what I'm doing. I just make a swirl, and I worked with that kind of imagery and metaphors, left is female, right is male. But then in my own journey, it's not always like that. It depends. And everything is like a case by case scenario. And then there was a lot of synchronicity going on, because as I was taking notes, I stopped taking notes, because then you were talking about things like you were reading my mind or something. Because when you said your body as a dowser, I was like, yes, because I was just in the process of writing. The shaman's number one tool is the body. And ultimately, like, what if, you were out and about with your husband and you were out of town, and oh no, I don't have my dowsing rods. Now what? You can't function? Like, no, you have you. You always have you. You're your number one body. It's all about going in, and any tools that we use, I like to think that, it's first and foremost just to help us to be creative. It helps the conscious mind figure things out, right? Because to some degree you want to categorize things, because the conscious mind needs to put things in boxes, but then we get stuck in those boxes, right? Like you were talking about. And so even using your body as a dowser, what I might feel might be different for you, and that's okay. It's not one all be all end all. And that's why it's important to share this story medicine, because how many other people are getting, you call it God bumps, spirit bumps, lots of different names for it. I remember getting those bumps and thinking, like, they're usually accompanied by a sensation of coolness. And it's like, but I'm not cold. That's the thing. But why am I getting this? Because it's a communication from the subconscious mind, arguably God or some kind of ghosty spirit connection that I have. And so this was really powerful. And then the spiral image to me is really important because I believe in circles. We should go around and around. We should have a beginning and a middle and an end, and we should reflect and whatnot. But at some point, we need to break out the circle and actually alchemize and move on. And again, this is the eagle condor medicine, carrying the high quality items forward, leaving the rest behind. Like right now, you're in a place where you can talk about, your life, and you can laugh at it. It doesn't mean that your life is perfect and whatnot, but you're like the healed healer. You can talk about it without getting angry, and I was thinking about that. Me too, being the healed healer doesn't mean my life is perfect, doesn't mean, sometimes I might get upset about it, yeah. But for the most part, like, when I was relating to what you were saying about like lawsuit and employer issues, um, just a few years ago, I probably wouldn't be able to participate in a conversation because I just would have been so angry, right? So you just leave that behind. It's the old matrix, and now that's not your circle anymore. Now you've alchemized into this spiral, and you're going to continue alchemizing. So even though you might be enjoying this part of your journey, it's temporary, just like everything. And I know I have a problem where I tend to cling to things, especially when I really like them, and then and I forget, and that's just part of my own personal journey, is remembering, like, don't get too hung up on things in a positive way. Things are supposed to change. They're supposed to alchemize because when the tower comes down, it shouldn't be traumatizing, devastating. It should be like positive. It should be a sense of relief. Not that it's going to be easy peasy lemon squeezy, but just the sense that, this isn't forever. There's going to be changes, right? And the rebuilding of that tower and taking that alchemy as your own, and really owning it. And I also wrote disease care because you speak a lot about healthcare, and unintentionally, you and me, we were supporting disease care. If you basically want to take medication and stay sick, then you just keep supporting disease care. And when it comes to systemic approaches and just checking off a list, well, you know what? The doctor's getting paid at the end of the day. I'm not getting paid to go to the doctors, and medication costs money. It's making me confused. I will advocate there's a time and a place for medication, but I will also advocate that should be temporary. There needs to be support in place because, especially going on a heavy medication, it's very undermined. And especially people who have children, those behaviors are reflective of alcoholics and drug addicts, but it's prescription medication. So seemingly society accepts that. And that's a big part of the story medicine we don't talk about, is like, you don't, like, when you take a prescription, like, because maybe your shin is hurting or whatever, the pill doesn't know. It just thins all of your blood, so that it could help reduce swelling. Now I'm just kind of ranting, but like, this is why we connect so much, and why we're hooked on our monthly meetings in Dr. Bruce Lipton's Communicells, because he can put the science to all of this stuff, right? And
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't need the science to have, to prove it, but when somebody like him speaks to the science about it, and then somebody like yourself who's taking an interest in the research, like, it helps people like me say to other people, like, look, I'm not alone here. And even though I don't have the science background, here's a name and a book of somebody else who does. And you could probably relate to this, but I find myself really exhausting myself trying to explain myself to people, and it's trying to be trying, and they're not interested in, like, they're committed to misunderstanding me. And so my circle the last handful of years has gotten really small. It made me feel sad and depressed about it, but it's actually all part of my own alchemy and this new matrix and my own spiral. So it just really, thank you. I still want to read the introduction from your book, but before I do, It's just really nice, especially because you're a first time guest. And like, this is your fifth book too that you've written. So, I mean, clearly you have to come back as a guest on the show. But did you want to comment to anything that I just said before we move on?
Oh, well, I will say, so I don't know if you can see this. So I'm wearing this little pendant. I know, even if I move in, there you go. I think you can see it. It's a triple spiral. They sort of, the way they started it, you can almost make out an S, the letter S, and
Yes.
then the other spiral joins it. Now, nobody knows who engraved it. Nobody knows why. And it is from Ireland.
Hmm.
It is, I know we've got an echo.
Well,
It,
I'm not muted. Sorry, that's my fault.
that's okay. So it was, it's a symbol that is etched in the stone. When we talk about, well, it's not carved in stone, something being a true or not. I always think of this too. I love what you said, by the way, and I love what you said is in particular about the children too. Um, this is why I think it's so important to stay open, because things like this, and as a writer, I mean, I'm big on context, right? But this invites us to the mystery, to open without context and always be open to the new that's coming in to teach us and show us. It's found on a stone that's in the back wall of a place called Newgrange. It's all one word, Newgrange. And that was one of the first stops that we made on our sacred Celtic journey. It's important to me in particular for many reasons, but one is during winter solstice, and I knew nothing about this when we took the trip. Winter solstice, there's a light box on the front face of the Newgrange monument. They call it burial tomb. Okay, so thousands of years ago, it's dated before Stonehenge, but nobody really knows. But it had a light box built into the top of the entranceway. Sort of when you enter it, it's like a cave. And this light box would be above your head and above the threshold that you have to duck and go under to get in. So, winter solstice sunrise, when the sun starts coming up, it shines in for 17 minutes to the back wall of that burial chamber or tomb, and it lights this symbol. So that's just a small, talking about having faith as a mustard seed and that kind of things. The very small things sometimes are the very things that mean the most to us in the end. And the light will penetrate that. And believe me, that chamber, when they turn, because they now have electricity in there and they can turn on and off house lights, but they will do a demonstration with a pen light, because we first went in July. So that was not winter solstice, right? Winter solstice is in December, for those that aren't familiar. But we went in July and they turned off all the house lights, and it was so black in that tomb or that chamber that I could literally put my hand up in front of my face like this and not see my hand. It was the darkest place I'd ever been in my life. And I knew there were people standing shoulder to shoulder with me, but you wouldn't know unless somebody made a sound. So I say that because at the end of that experience, when we came out, they had little 3.5 by 5, three by 5 cards that you fill out to enter a lottery. Because every year they will have school children come and they will pick from these cards, from these entries, and they will pick, I think it was, I won't quote it now, but somewhere around 20 people from all over the world, because everybody who visits throughout the year gets to put in one entry form. Even our tour bus guide driver, the gentleman who was driving our bus that day, he said every time he takes a tour group, he enters, because every time you, right? So he's like, why not? And his whole life he wanted to go. And so we're standing with him. I'm filling out my card, and my husband said, I don't know why you're filling in this card, because we're not coming back to Ireland if you win this. And at that time, I had a real issue with going anywhere cold in the winter. Now we live in New Hampshire, so haha, joke on me, right? But you can probably guess what happened. I won. And I was the only person from the US that year, and that was 2019. So we went back to Ireland for a 17-minute potential. It wasn't guaranteed the sun would come. I mean, the sun will come up, but they get a lot of rain in Ireland and cloudy weather. And literally the guy, when we came through customs, said, so why are you visiting Ireland in December of 2019? And we said, well, I won this lottery to Newgrange. Not everybody that even lives in Ireland knows what Newgrange is, right? So he said, so you're returning to visit us for our weather in December, and made such a joke about it, right? And I'm like, you. But yeah, the sun did not shine, because just as we were in the chamber, and that's the end of that story, is that this big storm rolled in, and the gentleman that went with me, because the tour bus driver he already had some other plan. He's kicked himself a million times, I'm sure by now, that he didn't just change his plans and go with me. I also invited Patricia McGivern to go back with me. My husband went, but we also took another couple with us, and that gentleman ended up going in with me, because I was allowed to take one guest in with me, and his wife waited outside till after, and then she was able to come in, thankfully, because I was the only one, and I've brought them with us from the US, but I was the only winner from the US that year. And after that year, we all know what happened with COVID and with lockdowns. They literally locked down Newgrange and didn't do any more winter solstice experiences for 3 years after that. So I felt this huge, I don't want to use the word privilege, but I will. I did feel a privilege that I was one of the last people that got to go and experience that, even though the storm rolled in right at the moment that the sun was going to come up and we were going to see the light shine in on the engraving, on the etching. There was the storm. We had perfect weather, another word I tend to not use, but the weather had been spectacular the whole time. We ended up going for a week, because to get the better rate on the flight, we ended up spending a little more on the hotels. But we had a fantastic time with that couple, and we didn't even really know them that well, but we connected on so many points, because he had been to the Monroe Institute and knew a whole bunch of stuff that I was soaking it all in like a sponge. And I learned things about my name. I mean, it was just a blessed experience the second week so we had the trip in July, and then we had the trip in December to go to Ireland specifically. But July, of course, we did the England and Scotland as well, which were fantastic, and all kinds. I could talk for hours just on that trip. But I did write about those with pictures in my blog, if folks want to take a look at my blog, sheilamurray.net. It's very easy. It's just my name all together, and then .net instead of .com. So, but yeah, you can find those. You just go to the blog and search either Ireland or Scotland or England. There's a separate blog for each country. And you'll also see the Game of Thrones tour stuff and all that too, because it was fantastic.
That is amazing. I got to get to Ireland. I want to go there for like 2 years just to experience the full seasonal cycles. Your little gnome. Show the spiral on your little gnome. Sheila made this for those of you who are catching the replay here. I think it's so cute. And all this business of the goddesses. And I wrote down a lot of stuff. I wrote down womb and tomb, season of dreams, because the winter time is the dark time. And I also wrote the word down, penetration, because there's so many sexual metaphors in nature and in literature, and especially long ago, like whoever carved those spirals was definitely working with those kind of themes, where there's some kind of light representing the masculine coming into the dark womb of the feminine, but not being overbearing, and the spirals kind of connected to affinities and this recycling, letting things in, letting things out, like this breathing, expanding that we do. And it was really awesome listening to that. And the thing too is, like, it was meant for you to be there. And it's interesting that, shoot, you didn't get to actually see it coming, but maybe you weren't supposed to see that. You were just supposed to be there for all those other reasons. And even just to experience the darkness and those womb and tomb themes, whether you were even conscious or jiving with that stuff at the time, and the goddesses. And I thought about goddesses when you were talking, because when it comes to themes of sovereignty and like the Kaliak and the wind coming and winter, like winter doesn't ask to come, it comes. And like that was like that day you were there, like the storm is coming. Sorry, Sheila, biological one, even though you're here, the storm has called and is unfolding, and you needed to be there, and for whatever reasons to be one of the last. And also this business of being somebody from the US in particular, the one and only, and then going back to comments you made earlier about your mother, about how the US is supposed to be this milk and honey kind of place. And at one point in history, it was like the United States that's your white picket fence, all of the engineering, science, like it was just blooming, 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 right? And so somehow you're mixed up in there. You're mixed up in that. So I wrote something else, but I can't read my own writing. I don't know what I said. Newgrange. It says Newgrange.
Newgrange.
Newgrange. I need to get there for sure. Absolutely. Okay, well, we've been chatting for an hour. Why don't I read that introduction? I've got it here. Before I read it, I'll just pull up the book. We are all connected. And I have a question about the title because it's based on a whisper that you heard. But let me read the introduction first. There might be some words in there that I can't pronounce. I glanced at it. But let's see how we do here. Okay, I just got it up here. Okay, this is the introduction from Sheila's book. And again, the link for Sheila is in the description. So in life, so much of what matters most is simply taken on faith, that the sun will rise again tomorrow, that the sea will stay in their place, that we will be able to enjoy the act of eating a meal, not only with a healthy body, but with enough money to pay for it. And perhaps most profoundly, that we will wake up tomorrow still here with a beating heart and a clear enough mind to remember who we are. Consequently, in our attempts to function rationally in this world, we adhere to social and cultural norms. And depending on where we live, most of us don't give much conscious awareness to living any way else. We'd probably be more spazzed out, losing physical and emotional control than we already are. As an aside, I think a lot of people act erratically these days. We take a lot of things for granted. We accept that our parents and teachers tell us when we're young, because what choice do we have? We believe the adults around us and assume they know what they're talking about. As we grow, we believe the experts who continually speak of their theories as truth, though quiet, honestly, they are simple theories. It is true that we don't know what we don't know, and that the longer we live, the more we learn. We learn from everyone and everything around us. In fact, to be informed is to take information in and allow it to inform us. And I love how Sheila made it a point to take the word inform and separate it into inform. Thus, my not knowing or ignorance of what the phrase "we are all connected" was about as that's all I had and no other context, is where I started my inquiry, which has now become this book. One of the surprises that emerged as this book unfolded is just how many different things the phrase, we are all connected, means to different people depending on the lens that they're looking through. It's a bit like turning a kaleidoscope. The same light reveals an endless variety of shapes and colors, yet it all comes from one source. When we sit with that simple phrase, it can open doors into many worlds at once. Science is quantum physics, neuroscience, and cosmology. Spirituality with biblical echoes and stories of afterlife communication. Esoteric traditions with sacred sites, key lines, and alternate archaeology. Social and psychological understanding with sociological relationships and philosophy. Digging into these various rabbit holes while researching and writing this book, paradoxically, I opened up a seemingly endless and broad overarching scope of possibility that the idea of interconnectedness offers. It seemed to point me toward being more helpful to others. For years, though, that beautiful idea of connection bumped up against a very human struggle of mine. I had been labeled codependent during my second failed marriage, and that label stayed with me longer than I care to admit. When the words, we are all connected, came to me, a part of me groaned. Here we go again. And I thought I had already healed myself, sacrificing tendencies and low self-esteem. I wanted to stand in my own life as a sovereign, empowered individual, not someone who disappeared into everyone else's needs. Through all the years of codependency counseling I'd gone through, I was told that self-love isn't selfish, and my spirituality became informed from the shift as well. I went from being ruled by my subconscious mind thinking that I needed a man in my life to being just fine on my own. Spiritually, it was a change to consider that we are each a fractal of omnipresence, and that I could be a strong, independent, free spirit, yet appreciate and honor everyone else. I later also learned to ask for a little help as needed or a hand up. I eventually uncovered that each of us can do our own individual part to add to the collective diamond shine and brilliance of the whole and still honor our sovereignty. And from meditating on the 4D yin and yang symbol, and also a mirror ball peering through a kaleidoscope, watching the sunrise through the trees to see how the leaves spread out the various rays of the sunshine, and studying seemingly desperate religious doctrines and sacred texts, Taoism, Buddhism, Theosophism, I'm not sure how to pronounce that word, and the ontologic, uh, oncology of Jesus the Christ, to name a few. I've come to know self-love can simply mean we can choose to polish the mirror of the self every day. Omnipresence is complete and utterly whole. It's possible and quite achievable to shine brighter and offer more to everyone we encounter from such a polishing. I won't call it perfection because I've learned that there's no perfection in art and that the living of life is an art. Oh, and how great thou art. And I love how this ends. And it's just, you can tell that this book is fun and funny to read. And I like how you said, like, you still ask for a hand up, not a hand out, but a hand up. And that's really important too. And even the humility of admitting somebody like Sheila struggled with self-esteem, had failed marriages. That's because Sheila's a real person too, going through her own alchemy and her own path, and just really good synchronicity, I think the introduction had for the whole show today. Um, because, yeah, your parents tell you what to think, how to think, and we're brought into this world with preconceived ideas, just being in the belly of the mother's womb. We still hear and think, and we feel the mother's energy, and we interpret all of that. And then by the time we're born, it's like, now what? And you know what? Like, I believe this is why the terrible twos are so terrible, because finally it's like, by age 2, you can understand a heck of a lot more than what you can communicate.
Yes.
And developmentally, you can't help but fall asleep. You only have so much capacity to think, and you find yourself in a codependent relationship. And it's just interesting, even that language, codependency, and this business of not needing a man, and also just like the introduction in itself has, you get a lot of bang for your buck. And I don't remember the quote offhand, but it's just like, as soon as I start reading it, there's like all this information in brackets. So I feel like, when you read this book, there's Sheila's 2 cents and humor that comes out, but also the humility to admit that we don't have all of the answers.
Mm-hmm.
And can you tell us a bit more about the whispering that you heard? If it was an actual like voice, like your clairvoyance, because some people hear voices. Folks like myself, it's just a knowing. I don't understand. I just know randomly. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, thank you, Gina. You're so right. And I've learned that I'm clairsentient, so I feel more. That's that dowsing, yeah, coming out. But yes, so the clairaudience or clairaudient ability, other than experiencing tinnitus now, but I didn't back then. So it was still around that time frame, 2004, 2005. Um, there is a way for me to tell exactly, but what happened was my husband and I were still dating. I'm not even sure we were living together in that moment, but we took a vacation together. And on this vacation, we went to Kentucky and we went to a small town, but come to find out later it was near a military installation. So that added another layer of complexity to the story, which I talk about in the book. But what happened was we'd had a great day, great night, went to bed, went to sleep, and I remember sleeping really good. But in the middle of the night, I heard a deep male voice, and the voice said, "We are all connected." And before I could even like think to myself or wake up enough to go like, am I dreaming that? I mean, I literally thought I heard it external to my head. It said it again. It repeated it like, "Hello, we know you can be a little dense sometimes, and we want to get this through. Like, you've got to get this. Like, this is a mission thing for you. We are all connected." But I mean, it just came in so one of my first book authors that I ever had the lovely, delightful experience to meet was Neil Donald Walsh. And so I asked Neil, I mean, he wrote Conversations with God. If who else on the planet Earth is going to answer my question? I thought I'll just meet Neil and ask him, and I'm done, right? That's what which is hilarious to me now. But I asked Neil, and he said, "Did it sound a little like me?" Like he made a joke out of it, which is also hilarious just on its own. But I said, actually, yeah, it did kind of sound like him. But then he referred to God as a woman. So that threw me off. But Yeah, I mean, he couldn't say if it was God, if it was him, if it was, he didn't know. And I just thought, for somebody who's been writing all these books about talking with God, to not get like I wanted the definitive answer, because I was going to write that sucker down. And then I didn't get the answer. But I was like, okay, apparently I'm still on this journey to figure this out. But yeah, a deep male voice, and it said it twice. And so by that point, I was awake, because then my noodle brain started in, like, what the heck. And I poked my husband, well, who later became my husband, and I said, did you hear that? Because I really thought somebody was like in the room or in the next room or whatever. And he said, no. And he was asleep. And he just said, you're dreaming, go back to sleep. And even in the morning when we got up, he didn't even remember it happening. I said, you don't remember me waking you up in the middle of the night asking who the heck this, who said this? Was the TV on? And the other, no. And so his sister was in the house as well, and we asked everybody at breakfast, did anybody hear anything, because I didn't want to put anything in their head, right? No, nobody heard anything. Everybody slept great. So I'm like, well, and so I've shortened that to just say nobody was in the house, but there were people in the house, but no, nobody would admit anyway to being awake or hearing anything. So I will never know perhaps where it came from. One of my best friends, who's Baptist, I've grown up with my whole life since at least third, fourth grade, she said it was God talking to you. And that just, and I'm very, making that very brief, but she had a beautiful way of putting it, which is in the book. But I just said, at the fore of that, I'm not, maybe that's my limiting belief still, but I'm not ready to accept that God would speak to me audibly. So I still just say, I don't know. But it's never happened before or since. So that is specific enough to get my attention, to help me dig in. And so it was actually the first co-author book that I wrote back when I was living in the St. Petersburg, Florida area. I met these folks who did, I believe it was called Transformation Publishing, and they were putting together a co-author book series. And it was a lot of authors. There must have been 30 people that wrote in that book, and it's not a very big book either. So you got maybe a page or two. And that was what I wrote about, was we are all connected. That's how deep this journey has taken me over 20 years, was that, I started with just not knowing anything about that, no context phrase, to meeting Neil and, all the different people that I asked, and modalities and practices that I explored to try to figure it out. I never had tinnitus until just a couple years ago. So it wasn't, so I still don't know, like, are the angels tuning my ears? You know, and I have a pastor uncle, and I've asked him, and he just said, like, the we're all connected, he attributes to the Holy Spirit or angels, but he doesn't think the tinnitus is the angels tuning my ears. So I don't know, but I love everything. I follow Nikola Tesla, so anything frequency, anything magnetism, I'm all in. It's a fun ride, if nothing else. I'm enjoying it. So what can I, but I went from a 1 or 2 page synopsis of We're All Connected in that first book to the 600-page book, because it's just exploded. Even the 2004 movie, What the Bleep Do We Know? And I'll talk about that, or I'll mention that at least in the keynote. But I credit that movie for people who don't know anything about the woo. Go back and watch that old movie. It's old now, but Nassim Harameyn's in there. They mention, I think, even Abraham Hicks, I'm not sure. But it was, I know The Secret introduced the world to Abraham Hicks, at least the original version. But the What the Bleep, I think, was just so mind-bending, that it was just so expansive, because for people who didn't understand how atoms work, even, and I just happened to be lucky. I think one of my elementary school teachers, you'll appreciate since you've got the teaching background, she taught us that in science class, I remember early on, she'd say, put your hands on the desk in front of you. And now I want you to realize that the desk is not solid. And I went, what? How's this? That molecules and atoms are spinning, and so nothing in our reality is really real, or really solid, at least. So yeah, I'm enthralled. Oh, a couple words that you stuck on. Let's see, omniscience. So I talk a lot in my blog about omniscience, but you're very close. And if you want, you can break that word apart and say omni, because God or spirit is omnipresent, which you said. Omnipotent, which means all powerful, and then omniscience is omni, and then science. So that's how we can easily blend any spiritual approach with science, because omniscience it covers it all. It's everything around us, beside, in front, behind, on top, below, through. It's every direction. And you talked about, asked about the left and the right. Well, omniscience has you covered. So when my husband and I used to early on have these philosophical religious discussions, and he would get stuck somewhere on something, some point, I would say, that's okay, because the God that I believe in covers it all. And that would just end the whole discussion. I don't think you can cover omniscience. I've not found a way to break that apart and deny it. To me, it's an undeniable reality. It covers all the scope. So I just tell my friend who's the psychic medium, I said, I'm enveloped by omniscience. That's all the security or safety or protection or whatever, right, that I need. And she looked at me one day and she's like, what? And then she's like, nobody thinks like you. And I thought she meant me in particular. She just meant nobody thinks like you, like to everybody. Because as you said, we all experience life differently. And we think and feel and rationalize and all of that shit differently. So yeah, why not make it fun? And then that'll help us not judge each other too. So
For explaining, clarifying that. See, where I struggle is I don't like falling down those rabbit holes with other people and having debates. I like being my own little world, having my own little one-sided conversation. And I do like to do my own thinking. I like to reach my own conclusions. I don't need to have a science something but it is interesting that I started to let go of categories because I was finding myself inhibited. But going back to the spiral metaphor, like, this is all part of the alchemy, because even my comment earlier, like angels, like, those weren't angels. Were they ETs? I don't know. Was it some kind of technology hybrid? I don't know. Maybe it was all of the above. But all I know is that, what if I was in a community that made me stay hooked on angels? And so when you heard this voice, thankfully people gave you ideas, because you did ask for ideas. But I think it was your uncle. Somebody was commenting that basically they don't know. Like, it's up to you to know and to figure that out. And the vulnerability too. This is all part of the story medicine, because what if that person was like, oh yes, that's 100% God? Or what about if they're like, actually, that's your father? Like, how do they know? And maybe they have a psychic connection and they actually know, actually, Sheila, that was the neighbor who lived 3 doors down growing up like all this time, he thought it was God, or maybe it was just the neighbor dog, who has a voice now all these years later. And like, you don't know, right? But like, thankfully nobody tried to convince you otherwise, and you're open to the interpretation. And I was going to ask you about ringing in the ears. Have you ever had ringing in the ears? Because when I was a child, I was never the sick type. And one day my ears were just ringing and it would not stop. And somebody told me it had something to do with the Earth's uh, magnetism and electronic field. Um, I only found this out recently, but back in my childhood, when I think back to those angels, it's like, did that happen before or did it happen after? And I don't remember, but I remember my vision and my hearing flip flopped after that experience because it was traumatizing. It was not like, oh, holy angels, thank you. It was like, oh my God, there's angels coming out of the wall. It was really scary. And that trauma caused this flip flopping of my senses. And anyways, like, again, you think you're losing your mind because you hear a ringing sound, but really it's because your whole mind body energy field is now like impacted by this experience, and it's an expansion and an awareness that you've probably always had, but you weren't tapped into it. And so, why don't you tell us a little bit about that? And just before you do, I wrote formlessness because I'm on your wavelength, like going back to molecules, because even though, like, my coconut here, it's solid, it's hard. If somebody wanted to stab me with this pen, like it would cause a problem for me. So it's hard when we talk about things like solid, liquid, gas, and the molecules doing the bump when heat, and then we like, so just to have a teacher that inspired those kind of thoughts is really cool. I tend to throw a lot at my guests. Sorry if I just overwhelmed you there, but tell us about tell us about ringing in the ears and your clairsentience and how that might have been impacted after this experience.
Oh, well, yeah. While you were speaking, I was thinking there's a lady, and forgive me, I forget her last name, but I just became aware of her yesterday when I was searching through your group. Her first name's Julia. You may know who I'm speaking of, the one that interviewed the gentleman from Tennessee, Kentucky about Bigfoot and something. I know. And it's not a topic I would usually be drawn to, except my husband loves the whole Bigfoot thing. So I did watch some of that, and I was so well, it was just, it was opening. I was fascinated by that. They were talking about the pole shift. And so, how this relates to the tinnitus and the ringing of the ears is that if what they're saying is a thing, that instead of the pole shift stuff that we hear people talk about isn't the true north south pole of the planet, but is a pole shift within us, that makes sense to me, that we would experience something like this, or even a vision enhancement or vision loss. And maybe that'll help us not be kind of scared about those things. I've learned to live with this ringing in the ears, which is, for me, it's more of a buzzing that's on a specific tone. And my husband's a musician, so when he plays guitar, he'll hit one string and it's the C note, and one's an E or something, right? So there's the difference in the tone. And so a few minutes ago, and during our conversation, when I was talking about my mom, that tone changed, sort of went up higher. It's almost a squeal like. So it's always there. When I had my ears tested, though, they said there wasn't anything physically wrong. So it's something about the communication in the brain, similar to how our brain is what's actually processing to allow us to use our eyes and see, right? Because we're actually seeing things in reverse somehow, kind of like the old Polaroid picture taking. But anyway, the way that we're, and I'm not an ophthalmologist or right, an eye doctor, but I know enough about the science to tell you that it's backwards, and that it gets flipped on the plate or whatever that's back there. I don't want to say cornea, but there's a piece of the eye, the optic something lens, and it gets flipped, and then the brain processes it to be what we see. So even though we see things, they're still not really reality because it's all flipped. And maybe that's what's going, I don't know. But speaking of hearing a voice when you were younger, I or having that sensation of the ringing in the ears, not a voice. I'm sorry, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but yeah. So whatever you heard then, and it being scary, I remember when my children were toddlers, I was apparently, and I didn't know what stress was really, but I apparently was experiencing it. I was apparently under a lot of stress. And I remember one day washing dishes at the sink, watching them through the window playing in the yard, which cements in my mind how old they were. They were young. And I started hearing voices then in that moment, but they were overlapping. They were, and I, they were different than the "We're All Connected" voice because they did not seem audible to me. I really thought I was just hearing them in my head, and I was wide awake, of course, washing dishes. But because they were overlapping, I thought I was going crazy, schizophrenic type crazy. And I thought I'm having a stroke or an aneurysm. I didn't even know what an aneurysm was back then, but that's what the word I would give it now. So I went to the bathroom, stopped what I was doing. I went to the bathroom and I just got down on my knees and I said a prayer and I asked Jesus, please take this away. And then it happened, I think, like the next day even. And I did the same routine and prayed and asked for it to go away. So I gave Jesus the credit for that because he took it away, or in some way it was gone. And I never had that experience any other time like that until, of course, the "We're All Connected" voice. But I didn't see that in the same light really because I wasn't hearing it in the same way. I wasn't experiencing it the same way. And because all those voices had overlapped and I couldn't make out any words other than I felt like I was in a group of people talking, a room of people talking all at once is what it felt like or what it sounded like. But yeah, the "We're All Connected" was so different. And it being the specific words and it saying it twice and it being the deep male voice is where I draw a lot of distinction. But you're right. And then this tinnitus just happened within the last 2 years. It started right before we moved to New Hampshire. So I can't even say, well, it was a Florida thing versus a New Hampshire thing. A lot of people just say it's age. And a lot of people I've met say they've had it for 25 years and they've just learned to live with it. So we sleep with the crickets on at night, playing on YouTube, the blackout screen that runs all night, because we tried different white noise stuff and it didn't help. And then my husband one day pops up with, well, I've had tinnitus for years as a musician from all the amplifiers and loudspeakers he used to play in bands. So I said, well, I mean, I didn't even know that. He never even mentioned it because he just learned to live. So I said, here I am spending thousands of dollars on all these treatments and stuff, trying to figure this out to cure it and heal it. And he's been living with it. So I've just learned to adjust as well. But he now has some hearing loss in one ear, which is a whole other thing.
So did you ever fall down the rabbit hole with like those triangles that you ding to try and like rebalance, and it wasn't helpful with the
I
tinnitus?
have
No.
tuning forks too. I spent $500 on tuning forks. you know, I mean, yes, I've definitely, I'm a rabbit hole person. I'm with you there. I have tried many things. I'm still trying things. I'm
Right.
trying essential oils now too, where I took a class on how to mix my own. And so I mixed my own and spray it and just let it waft, because I thought maybe I was dosing myself too much with the essential oils before because I was, you know, and all that, right? So now I'm just misting it and sniffing it a couple times a day. But I don't
Well,
know.
essential oils are so important because long ago and still today, like when the sun is heating up the trees, essential oils are being released. When the sun is even just hitting the wood chips on the ground at the park, like that smell of cedar, it all comes to life. Like, and somebody like yourself, like you don't have asthma anymore, but when you did, somebody like yourself, imagine you can just walk through a forest and just breathe in all the essential oils. I haven't been to Australia, but I would like to get there someday. because apparently the eucalyptus just really scents up the whole entire place. Um, you know, and I wrote down age when you were talking because a lot of time, especially women who are around age 40, that's what happened to me. My body, I had a severe panic attack. Respectfully, it was severe, but it was totally undermined. And I'm not the sick type, and my whole body just was beyond sensitive after that, and it still is. But I faced the stigmas, and people were brushing me off and telling me, "Oh, you're getting older. Oh, menopause." Like I still get a full period, like yeah, when I do get my menstrual cycle, my body, I can feel the wear and tear, but like that's not what this is. Or like if I feel emotional about something, oh, it's just because you're a woman, basically. But they don't say it like that. They say, oh, yeah, and it's just premenopause. Like, and it's true. Like for some women, menopause is hell and it hits them early. But it's too, it's a systemic approach. They just want to put a band-aid on it and label it and off you go, right? Um, and good for you for making your own essential oils. Like it's nice to purchase essential oils. I had no idea how many poor quality products are out there. Even just knowing the land and this business of sovereignty, because I forget the name of the company, but there is a company that they pay the farmers even if there's no harvest. And that's why these essential oils are a little bit more money, because it keeps the farmers employed. But also the farmers, like they say prayers, it's not just picking. And they pick the plants when they're like ready to be picked. It's not just manufactured. And the insects in the local area need to be part of this bigger picture, right? And so like any product, you want to have a quality product, otherwise what's the point of using it, right? So like are you just mixing like vodka or special oils with flowers? There's so many remedies out there. When I make my spirit flora, I like to use vodka and then just whatever flowers are around. I don't drink this. It's just to spit out when I'm doing spirit work. You can think of it as holy water if you want. And the color varies. So I like to keep it in a clear jar, and it used to last me like one bottle, one season. Because I was like, well, I don't want to spend all this money on vodka, especially if I'm just going to be spitting it out, right? But the more spirit work I engage in, the more vodka is in demand. And you know what? If I can't afford vodka, it's no problem to use vinegar. If I want to just use straight water, that's fine too, but then it won't last, right? And so it's important to take home remedy type courses because they can be dangerous. And I got it here. See, once we start chatting, we can't stop, right? But I have this test tube. It costs a lot of money. And if I'm making something, because I was going down this rabbit hole with stone medicine, and I have a super shitty memory recall. Like when it comes to doses and medicine, don't put me in charge, okay? Because I'll accidentally poison you. But like the thing is I took a course on stone medicine, and the girl basically said, get a clear crystal quartz. I think it cost me like $90 for this, but now I'm safe. Now I can take whatever I want, put it in here, and then I put it in my glass of whatever. And yeah, there's condensation factors going on, but not enough to like, and I don't push my luck. Like I wouldn't put something that I know intentionally it's just a way to protect yourself. And so that's really important too, because you don't want to make some kind of topical solution and end up with a rash or poisoning yourself. And you know what? Some plants you can rub on your body, but you can't ingest it. So there's medicine within medicine. And yeah, now I'm just kind of enjoying chatting with you here about medicine. But any thoughts on that, Sheila?
I was going to say right on. You're following your intuition, first of all. So that's awesome. And then, sure, we always have the references and any classes that we take to reinforce or to openness to the new things to try. I'm growing my own herbs here, the ones that work for me, that I trust, that I know work, like the oregano. I'll just ask it, hey, is it okay if are you okay if I take right one or two of the leaves, and I'll just eat it raw. If I feel any little something coming on, I'll just eat a couple of those raw leaves, sometimes every day for a few days. So I have basil that I'm growing. I have parsley, which is a great blood cleanser. It's just a great tonic overall, and you can eat it raw. I mean, they serve it in restaurants on the plate, right? So, it's not bad. So some of that's just life experience that you pick up along the way. Did you want to sit down, dear? My husband just came through. So, yes, I mean, some of it is. Oh, what was the one? Speaking of not eating it, and you may still be able to eat it, but it's calendula, um, and yarrow. I was growing yarrow in Florida. It grew. Some of the things I think we need are the things that we can grow very easily, that will grow. Just plant one and you'll end up with 30. My grandmother grew sweet potatoes. It got the family through the Depression back in the early days, in the 20s. So, yeah, 1920s. Just realized someone could mishear that and think, what, 2020s? Yeah, no, 1920s. She was growing baby sweet potato plants, and they multiplied so quickly that she could sell them when other people had no luck growing or starting their sweet potatoes. So things like that. I don't force it. If I can't grow it, I will definitely buy it. I'm trying lavender right now. If it doesn't work, I'm near a lavender farm, thankfully, so I can get lavender. But some things work so well on the skin that I don't know if you can eat it, but I wouldn't, just because it tastes horrible. Tinctures, I am doing that with alcohol. You mentioned the vodka. I think, and the lady who I learned tincture making from, self-proclaimed witch shaman in Florida. I do credit her in the book, by the way. I don't call her that, but that's what the labels she's given herself over the years. I think we all kind of have a journey, and we'll change our own labels. We rewrite, as you say, rewrite our stories. But she taught me tincture making, and I went to an in-person class, and we had the bowl of herbs on the table that we could, and they were labeled, this is what this does. And speaking of menopause, this is great for women who are in perimenopause or menopause or even post-menopause, which maybe where I'm at, I'm not really sure. But I'm definitely at the end of like the age for menopause. So I'm 64 now. So it's been interesting. It's a fun and interesting hobby to learn about, even if you don't want to become an herbalist and get certified. But just go to the classes and learn, because you can, if you go in person, you can pick from different herbs that you're probably not going to want to try to grow or buy, because there's so many to choose from. But you can choose in a class, make your tincture, take it home, put it in the cupboard, shake it, because it should be in a dark place or dark glass, and you shake it like every day for 6 weeks or something. You put your energy into it, like she did the whole ball of wax with it, right? I read other things online, and they're just like, yeah, you put your herb in the jar, you pour the vodka to the top, put a lid on it, put it away. But they don't tell you to specify the dark cabinet, the cool, the temperature, and all the things, right? So she really went into she was big on putting our intention into that mixture, whatever we were mixing. And then I still have some of that, and it's over 2 years old in the cupboard. If I ever feel the need, which actually I'm thinking now I might take some, because lately I've had some night sweats, and I'm like, is that part of this menopause thing? Because I had an ablation back in 04, early 04, 2004, and they took the lining out of the uterus. So I didn't have a hysterectomy, but I no longer have a menstrual cycle, because they took the lining, they kill it, electrical stimulation, they scrape it out. Because I'd had fibroids, I'd had, kind of just pain and whatnot. Well, turns out after that OB-GYN, I guess he was. After he did that to me, he moved to California. So I had no way to contact him, but the next OB-GYN or GYN that I went to, she was infuriated that I'd had that procedure because she said they learned so much about all of our other symptoms based on the menstrual cycle. And since I didn't have one, there was no way. She was lost in trying to figure out some other things that were going on at the time. But again, acupuncture to the rescue. Since my doctor of Oriental Medicine, my DOM, since she had left Florida, I went to Orlando to the woman who taught acupuncture, and she was Asian as well. I still recommend her to everybody. I would fly to Orlando if I needed to. That's how much faith I have in her, because I literally went to her for a cyst that they couldn't find. They did all the scans for, like the internal, the tummy, all of, and they could not. And so the GYN said, you know what? I'm not an exploratory surgeon. If I go in there, I'm going to take everything out. And I didn't want everything taken out for hormonal reasons, etc. So I said, I'm going to acupuncture. So I drove an hour from where we lived at the time to Orlando and had one session, $50 gone. Now, whether I had an ovarian cyst or whether it was in the tube, but it was hidden somewhere where the scans could not find it. But from all my symptoms, I had an ovarian cyst, and it was gone in one session. So I am sold on acupuncture I would say try it on everything, because your acupuncture doctor is probably going to charge you less than $100, somewhere between 50 and 100. Even if you were in New York City, I would hasten a bet that you could get an acupuncture session for a couple $100. I don't know now, but I'm guessing it's usually the least expensive option to try first. And if 1 or 2 sessions don't get you some relief, then you can go off on your own, do something else. That would be the only, and I can't say it's medical advice because I'm not a doctor, but that would be my lived experience, highly suggested advice for today, would be try the acupuncture. And I know people that I don't like needles. The needle is less. It's smaller than the size of a human hair. And if you've ever had a tattoo, and I have 2 of them, that hurts a heck of a lot worse. Tattoos are ridiculous how they hurt, depending on what part of the body. Like if you get it under here, it hurts worse than up here. So yes, go for the acupuncture. You will thank me later.
It's amazing. I went for acupuncture once. I taught English in South Korea, and I was surprised how easy the needles went in. Just there. And then they put this red light on me, and I just lay there like this. I was like totally vulnerable. I couldn't move or anything, but it was really comfortable and warm. And I did that a few times, and it was great. And, when you were talking, I thought about how, like, our bodies is just another form of the land. Like, we're Pachamama, Mother Earth. It doesn't matter if you're a masculine, you're still a Mother Earth, Pachamama, Gaia in your own right. Walking, talking trees we are. That's what I say. We're beaver dams. We heal with the earth. Well, we are the earth. That's why story species, story medicine, But it also made me think about the meridians and roadmaps within our very bodies. And again, the connecting to the spiral business, and the title of your book, the how we're all connected, because it is this ongoing spiral business, and having the openness to try something new, and often things that don't cost a lot of money, people don't believe in it. Like, it needs to be more expensive, but then it becomes too expensive, and people are so scared and inhibited and limited, because going back to our conversation earlier, like, a naturopath doesn't carry the same weight, and neither does like an acupuncturist. They don't carry the same weight as a family doctor or a psychologist or a psychiatrist that can fill out your form and give you the time off work that you need, or insurance papers or whatever. And you would think that the psychologist, psychiatrist, family doctor would talk to you about your feelings, which they're really focused on biology. And I personally didn't realize that until I needed that help in the social, because how you think and feel matters, right? Every thought you have. Wow. I feel like we could keep talking, Sheila, but it has been almost 2 hours. Definitely going to have you come back. And I'm really thankful that we were able to make it work. We weren't able to figure out a time to go live, but I'm thankful that we were able to at least pre-record this. All of Sheila's information. I've got one link that's going to be in the description. That's the net link that you provided. But where else can folks find you? What are some final thoughts you have for people listening to your story medicine right now? And let us know if you've got a Facebook group or something like that.
Well, thank you, Gina. I didn't even think about this, but I did recently open up a Facebook group. I believe I'm not sure if I made it public or not, but if you friend me on Facebook, you can find that group. It's the same title as the name of the book. So We Are All Connected. And I think it might even also say the how and the why. But it's definitely We Are All Connected. And I know there are other groups, because I used to have a public group out there and it just got too unwieldy for me to manage. And I was working still at that time. I've since retired. So, yeah, that's available. I'm on Substack as well. I repost my blog articles there. I'm on Truth Social. I am on Blue Sky, but I've not been putting anything out there yet because I'm trying to cover, I want to do justice by the left and the right politically. I tend to go for and I'm on Instagram. Definitely my YouTube channel, because that's where I'm such a heady person. I'm such the analytic, right? Even putting that in the title of this book. But I love the somatics and the getting into the body stuff. And I've never considered myself an athlete, but in the course of my life, I've seen a couple and worked with a couple personal trainers who insist that I'm this athlete. And I'm like, what? But they want me to run and all this stuff. And my husband's like, no, he's like, you'll destroy your knees and well, whatever. So I started dancing because I took ballet as a child and I loved it. So I went back and brought the dance back into my life, and I was going great every single day, holding myself accountable, putting it on YouTube to reinforce that I had an audience if it was 20 people, and I was dealing with some of the, I won't say naysayers, but just some of the public reaction that you get that you don't really want, especially as a woman and as an older woman too, more mature woman and a more curvy woman. And I'm just like, oh, whatever. So I just speaking of letting go, right? So I had to let go of those things. And I just try to take it as a joke. If somebody says, turn around or bend over or do this or do that, I'm like, oh, whatever. I know what that guy's thinking, right? But but I just, I would speed up the video speed, something like that. And I try to please, but I gave up people pleasing long ago too. So I only have a small space. So I thought, let me carve a niche out where I'm exercising, doing something I like with the dance. I'm doing it in a small space, and I'll at least aim it for people over 50. Initially, I started with 60, but I found through the YouTube statistics that I could view from my end, it would show me who was watching, and mostly it was women between 45 and 60. So I thought, let me aim for 50. And I'm not really teaching dance moves, but sometimes I'll throw a new one in if I see some that I think I can do. But I'm definitely not an expert. I've got the beginner's mindset, and I'm just doing it for fun and exercise. The only problem is that January I decided to do 3 songs a day. And so because I was doing 2 every day, which is roughly 6 or 7 minutes, And when I added the third one, then I hurt myself. So I thought, okay, it's time for me to rest, back off, kind of revisit how I want this channel to be presented anyway. And I'm going to a new doctor this afternoon, a naturopath, to talk about some of those issues. He comes highly recommended, but we'll see. You know, I'll either jive with him or I won't, and we'll see how it goes. And hopefully, I'll be back to dancing on YouTube. I went back to my qigong. I throw some qigong into the dance. I yoga as well, although I can't get down on my hands and knees in the space that I'm in when I'm dancing. I have a spa room upstairs with a infrared sauna in it. The red light PEMF TENS machine is up there for pain. I have a lava lamp. I have more crystals. During the winter, my herbs are up there in the window. So, you know, it's a healing space, but I've got a couple videos of it on my YouTube channel, but not a lot. Anyway, you asked where all I could be seen, and that's where folks can see the full
well, you know, epigenetics matters, and we play a role in the epigenetics of others, and we create our own epigenetics too. Like, epigenetics isn't just people, it's the very furniture around us and how the environment is placed, the very colors that we have, the organization of things, creating the sacred spaces. You know, they don't just happen, right? You make it happen by creating that space so that you can do your dance, right?
Yes.
I was just having a little laugh when you said you put the herbs upstairs in the wintertime, because it's like here in Canada, we have to like regrow that stuff or have like a special green room for it. We're like putting it by the window is still too cold.
Yes, agree.
And just want to show everybody this. This is a little thumbnail that's floating around. Summer Days, Story Species, Story Medicine, the Continuum of Conscious Evolution Conference Series. It's a big title, I know, but you know what? We just call it the conference, because what other conference would we be talking about, right? And so there's 4 conferences online each year. The first one, Promise of Spring, it was a real hit. Sheila will be presenting at this one, Summer Days, and I'm really looking forward to it. Make sure you visit my Buy Me a Coffee, get yourselves a ticket, and you can also get in on a monthly membership. There's some bonuses for you to check out, and one of those bonuses includes a link to the online conferences. So Sheila, it was such a pleasure to have you here. Look forward to your presentation, being the keynote speaker for Summer Days. And clearly need to have you back over and over and over again, because we just clearly have so much to talk about. So thank you so much for being a guest. I'm going to remove you from the stage, and I just can't thank you enough. It's so cool having you here, right? Somebody that I met in a different online community, and now here we are a handful of years later, just chatting it up. So thank you so much, Sheila, Spiral Sister. Appreciate you and appreciate your time today. Everybody, that was Sheila. Make sure you get a copy of her book. There's the link for it in the description. Here's another picture for you. Story Species, Story Medicine, first-time guest. And I'm looking forward to all the story medicine that we have to continue sharing with Sheila. And I know that the Promise or Summer Days is going to be a lot of fun. It's an online conference. Presenters, we're going to be hanging out the day before, the day after, just creating conference hype. And all the presenters are going to be coming on this show. So you get to have some special time with them. I'll show you Sheila's book here for a final time. We are all connected, how and the why. Sheila, very analytical, very open, into conscious evolution and clearing affinities, the image of the spiral, the alchemy that goes with it. As you can see, it's very easy to relate to Sheila, and it was such a pleasure to have her on the show. If you're interested in being a guest on Story Species, Story Medicine, reach out to me, Gina Virginia Casella. I would love to have you. And if you haven't published a book, don't worry about it, because you know what? There's going to be some upcoming guests on this show who they haven't published a book yet. And being a guest on this show is going to be a stepping stone for them, because you know what? Talking is writing. So if you can talk, you have a story to share. And if you don't talk to share your story, well, you can dance to share your story. You can draw a picture. You can play the guitar to share your story, because story medicine is not strictly a verbal communication. There's all kinds of communications, and nobody has been a guest on my show doing that kind of stuff yet, but I am looking forward to that, different drumming and whatnot. So thank you so much again for tuning into Story Species, Story Medicine. Gina Virginia Casella here, and I look forward to seeing you.